Welcome to the third Junesploitation episode of BNS About Movies. Enough with the introductions. Let's get to the movies. We got a lot. Lola was the June 21st movie, and that is an AIP movie. It is also released as Twinkie and London Affair. And Lola is the kind of story that only a movie made in the 70s could have.
Twinkie, I think you're growing up too soon. I never met a girl like this for me. Dumb but pretty like a schoolgirl should be. Twinkie, I think you're growing up too soon, girl.
Announcing the wonder treatment of the age.
Hi, you're
Twinkie.
Come on, it's me, it's me.
You're ugly, you're filthy-minded, and you're American.
Scott Boardman was an ordinary guy with an ordinary job, writing erotic novels.
Their bodies fused in a tangle of heat.
Then a friend recommended Twinkie, and whack! Ha! So weak! And so, Scott decided to take Twinkie. For better or for worse. And now, he's married.
Watch it, watch it!
Full of zip. Even gets arrested.
You can get anything up to 3 years and deportation.
Twinkie is good for everyone. For the young
Hello, you old spinster.
and for the not so young.
Sybil, for the last time, did you or did you not?
A diary with everything in it? You mean like what happened Monday?
Oh, crikey, no. Now, you must see that she gets enough sleep. If you can manage.
Parents swear by Twinkie.
Capital F!
Twinkie is a password to people of distinction.
She'll want more, you'll have to deliver, comes the heart attacks.
And now, a word from Twinkie's sponsor,
Me.
Mr. Charles Brunson, no less.
What sort of mark would you give me?
Straight A's.
Twinkie comes to you by courtesy of Miss Susan George. Matured lovingly for 16 years. Twinkie is recommended the world over by top people. Mothers, tycoons, go-getters, judges, connoisseurs,
Why don't you bring down some of your schoolgirl friends?
lawyers, mothers-in-law, magistrates, and celebrities.
When they booked into their honeymoon hotel, they didn't get the bridal suite. They had the romper room.
Twinkie fortifies the over 40s and mortifies the over 60s.
16. 16. Under that is, but I'm not very strong on my criminal law, but as far as I can remember,
Twinkie! Remember, folks, Twinkie comes complete in 2 sizes. Luxury penthouse size and in the regular schoolgirl pack. So rush out and buy some delicious Twinkie now.
Twinkie, oh Twinkie.
Can a mid-40s Charles Bronson fall in love, or at least lust, with a 17-year-old or 14-year-old, who knows, Susan George? Well, let's ask. Hey, I love Charles Bronson.
You believe in Jesus? Senator? Well, you're going to meet him.
But this is a strange movie for him to be in. He plays Scott Wardman, and he's in love, as we said, with Sybil Londonderry. I misjudged his age and her age. He's 38, she's 16. He seemingly knows the age of consent, and any guy that can instantly tell you the age of consent is a creep. Scott gets busted for being married to a child and forced to leave England. And he says, I make one uncool move with a nutty 16-year-old kid, and suddenly my whole world is turned upside down. And now this pornographic book author has to go back to the United States. If you think this couldn't happen, well, Norman Thaddeus Vane wrote this, and it's based on his own marriage to 16-year-old model Sarah Caldwell, who he married when he was also 38. In an interview with the astounding Hidden Films website, the writer and later director would claim, there's a reason I ended up marrying Sarah Caldwell, who was 16 at the time, and cast in Mrs. Brown, You Have a Lovely Daughter, which Vane scripted, Vane later based the script for Lola on The Scandalous Marriage. I was a good-looking kid on Kings Road in Chelsea. I had a sports car. I had money. I had a beautiful flat. He also pretty much explains the plot of this film in that interview. I met her at a party. She was stunningly beautiful. I had a small flat on Kings Road in Chelsea, and she used to come over secretly on the way back from school, and we used to, euphemism for have sex. And she told her parents that she was seeing me. I was probably 38 or something, and they were angry. Her father was head of the East India Trading Company. The only way we could see each other is if we got married, and in Scotland, you could get married at 16. So we eloped there. I'd been sleeping with a Scottish girl from Glasgow. You had to spend 3 days in residence in Scotland before you got married. So I asked her if we could use her family's address, and she said yes. Sarah called her parents and said, I'm very sorry to tell you this, but I got married today. The newspapers wrote columns about her. It was like a front page story. For months afterwards, they called me the cat of the year. I'll link to the interview below. It's wild. I urge you to read it as well as that entire great site. He claims that director Richard Donner immediately slept with Susan George. The movie was financed by an Italian baron who was a Bronson superfan who later committed suicide over Britt Eklund. The Bronson's wife, Jill Ireland, wanted to play the teenage girl. I believe that. And the Bronson couldn't be controlled by Donner, also agree, and ruined the movie. Well, it was fascinating because why would Scott and Lola ever get together? Well, have sex and stay together. There's nothing that suggests they have a single thing in common other than her schoolgirl crush on him and that she's Susan George in 1970. I get that. And that old guys seemingly like young women. I make fun of this all the time, and then I realize my wife's 12 years younger than me. Yet Bronson comes off as Charles Bronson, a man who speaks little and is quick to violence. Or maybe that's how I perceive him as I watch so many of his action movies. But when you see the posters and VHS covers for this, you'll see that I wasn't the only one who just saw Bronson as a force of violent nature. Lola ends up getting an apartment for the couple while Scott's in jail over a misunderstanding at a parade. Then she doesn't understand that he has a job as a writer and needs to be left alone when he's working. I'm a jerk myself. I'm a writer. I get it.
Oh, come on, hon. Don't be so grouchy.
I'm not being grouchy. I just want to finish my work.
Okay, I understand. I'll come back later on with a couple of sandwiches for you, and maybe you'll let me read something then.
Wendy, let me explain something to you. Whenever you come in here and interrupt me, you're breaking my concentration. You're distracting me, and it will then take me time to get back to where I was. Understand?
I have reenacted that scene so many times as a writer with my poor wife. Finally, after Lola realizes that she's just a kid and that this relationship won't work out, she runs away. She comes back and then writes him a letter and then decides to go back to England for good. This is not the last movie that Norman Thaddeus Vane would make that references his life. The Black Room, one of my favorite movies, is about how he cheated on his next wife in his own black room with penthouse centerfolds that he met while working on that publication. It remains to be seen if any of these women were vampires. Vane also made one of my favorite movies. I love all his stuff. Club Life, a movie that I want everyone to watch. It'll definitely be on the show. I wonder if Susan George met with her agent and said, can I do something not so scuzzy for my next movie? And he said, you don't want to do a movie where you sleep with a guy twice your age? She said, no. He's like, all right, I got a real classy movie for you. It's called Straw Dogs. And nothing bad will happen to you in it. Anyways, let's move on to the next movie, which is 2006's Ultraviolet.
Hello, my name is Violet. My name is Violet. I was born into a world you may not understand, may not understand, may not understand. Let me start at the beginning. Everything changed when a government lab discovered a virus that caused genetic mutation. They used it to create faster and stronger soldiers. The problem was, we became a threat.
I want them hunted down and killed.
Get on the ground! On your knees! We've managed to eradicate almost all of them.
Those of us that survived extinction started fighting back.
If you are compromised, destroy.
Copy that.
They made her a weapon.
Killing is what I do. It's what I'm good at.
They made her a target.
The humans want me.
You jeopardize everything by coming here.
I don't have any place left to go, Garth. Besides, you have all my guns.
And in the final days of mankind's greatest war,
This is pure suicide. No one but you could have pulled this off.
she will decide their fate.
Are you mental?
Come and get it.
Projection disruption.
Why are you doing this?
Because I hate humans.
You used to be human.
But not anymore, right? I got sick and now I'm something worthy of extermination.
You won't make it out of this complex alive.
Watch me. My name is Violet. I was born into a world you may not understand.
Ultraviolet.
Can you just feel 2006 all over that trailer? Anyways, Kurt Wimmer directed the Brian Bosworth movie One Tough Bee. I can't say it because we're trying to, they censor stuff on Spotify sometimes, but it rhymes with bastard. And wrote the remake of the Thomas Crown Affair and Sphere before he directed Equilibrium, the first movie that I took notice of. For that movie, he had created a style of fighting called gun kata, and that's what makes it stand out from a lot of 2000 science fiction movies. I was beyond excited for Ultraviolet, but wow, it had so many problems I thought it would never come out. Shot digitally on high-def video, it was his attempt at making a comic book movie. There's even tons of Ultraviolet comic covers that give the idea that we're in the middle of a longer story, something I love, but something that doesn't work ever, as evidenced by the TV show Cliffhangers and The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. It only makes you a cult movie that I end up getting obsessed about. The basic idea is sometime in the future, a super soldier experiment has led to the creation of hemophages, vampiric humans that are stronger, smarter than normal humans, like mutants. Keep that in mind. The war between humans and vampires leads to the end of everything. There's now only the Arch Ministry, a powerful corporation and joint world government. There's a resistance that's fighting back, and one of their soldiers is violent Songjat Sharif, Mila Jovanovic, whose latest mission is to break into a blood bank, steal a weapon that can kill vampires, her own kind. It ends up being a child named Six, Cameron Bright, who is a clone of Vice Cardinal Ferdinand Daxus, played by Nick Chinland, and filled with a virus that can destroy the hemophages. Fudges. Gosh. And despite this, Violet is sentimental and allows him to live despite hating all of humanity. By the end of the movie, it's revealed that Daxus and the hemophages are working together. I'm never going to say that word the same throughout. To create a new virus that allows them to control even more of the world. William Fichtner shows up. Yay. And if I ever make a movie, he's going to be in it. Not that it makes a lot of sense, but we're really here to watch gun battles and fistfights. In the post-Matrix world, everyone was making movies like this. It just happened like this one. Who cares that Six spends most of the movie living in a briefcase? Do I need to know motivations? Rotten Tomatoes said this is an incomprehensible and forgettable sci-fi thriller. It's inept in every regard. I hate seeing their stickers on my DVD cases. So we're ready to fight, Rotten Tomatoes. This is a movie where you watch Mila Jovanovic in various cool outfits. She has color-changing hair, and she shoots religious zealots when she isn't racing around on a motorcycle. I mean, why else would you want to watch this? I mean, that sounds like the perfect movie. Will Wimmer and Jovanovic were locked out of the ad by Sony, who said the movie was too emotional and needed to be PG-13. They cut it down from 120 minutes to 88. Because of this, the visual effects are completely unfinished, and there's incomplete temp renders that were never meant to be seen outside of the editing room. Everywhere else in the world, this didn't do well, but guess what? Japan loved it. They even made an anime sequel, Ultraviolet Code 44. In the very same year, Cameron Bright, whose very name sounds like an X-Men villain, Cameron Hodge, played Leech in X-Men The Last Stand. His role is the Pure Mutants, just like this movie. It's almost the same movie. He would play a vampire again when he got older. He's a Votori vampire Alec in Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and Breaking Dawn 2. I don't really want to be mean, but like gun kata is really taken from gun fu, which is Wikipedia refers to as a style of sophisticated close quarters gunfight resembling a martial arts combat that combines firearms with hand-to-hand combat and traditional melee weapons in a 50-50 ratio. Probably the movie we can say is the first gun fu movie is A Better Tomorrow, directed by John Woo, which gives guns the same style that open-hand combat and wuxia movies had within Hong Kong cinema. In the 1990s, it came to America. Movies like Desperado, The Replacement Killers, which had Woo's star Chow Yun-fat in it, and The Matrix, probably the movie that most brought it to our country, as well as people watching movies like The Killer and Hard Boiled. Today, John Wick has taken gun fu as far as it can go, but in 2002, Wimmer would use it in his movie Equilibrium. After failure of this movie, he didn't direct for years until he made Children of the Corn a few years ago, the remake. While he recovered, he did write a lot. He wrote Street Kings, Law Abiding Citizens, Salt, the remakes of Total Recall and Point Break, Spell, The Misfits, Expendables 4, and The Beekeeper, which was a big success. I really hope he gets the opportunity to make another movie and prove his talent to distractors. Equilibrium, which I've discussed a little bit in this, is the next movie we'll be getting to.
The cleric is the final line of defense. If the resistance compromises it, we are doomed.
In the near future, freedom.
You can't do this. You cannot do this.
There's nothing we can't do.
Is a thing of the past.
It's real.
Burn it. Now, betrayed by the state, the only thing more powerful than the system.
Welcome to the underground. Do you know why you came?
Yes.
They trained you your whole life to fight these kind of odds.
Is the man.
What can I do?
Who will overthrow it.
I've heard the most disturbing rumor.
Rumor, sir.
A rumor maintaining that one of the cleric is actually attempting to contact the resistance.
Then you know what I'm gonna do now.
Christian Bale, Kay Diggs. Equilibrium.
Feel like you were to rave for that movie? I'm going to turn over to my good friend Carolyn DeFonseca to read us some of the dialogue from this movie.
Thanks, Sam. Through analysis of thousands of recorded gunfights, the cleric has determined that the geometric distribution of antagonists in any gun battle is a statistically predictable element. The gun kata treats the gun as a total weapon, each fluid position representing a maximum kill zone, inflicting maximum damage on the maximum number of opponents, while keeping the defender clear of the statistically traditional trajectories of return fire. By the rote mastery of this art, your firing efficiency will rise by no less than 120%. The difference of a 63% increased lethal proficiency makes the master of the gun katas an adversary not to be taken lightly. By the way, I heard women whose names start with S are snakes.
How did we get the budget to get her on this show? Anyways, after World War III, the survivors have founded the totalitarian nation of Liberia, a place that outlaws all emotion, forcing the population to take the emotion-suppressing drug called Prosium 2. The government hunts on anyone who goes against this, labeling them sense offenders. They're soon hunted by the Grammaton clerics. When they show up, you're dead. They're also going to destroy any art, music, or books that you have before shooting you 1,000 times. The leader, Father Sean Pertwee, and the Tetragrammaton Council are being challenged by the underground. John Preston is one of those clerics. He's played by Christian Bale. He's a single father after his wife was killed for being a sense offender. His partner, Errol Partridge, Sean Bean, who dies in everything he's in, saves a book of poems and takes him to the Nether, which is, the cursed earth, the forbidden zone, to read. He tells Preston that now that he has felt emotion, he can die, so his partner kills him. The poem he reads is He Wishes for the Clouds of Heaven by William Butler Yeats. And hey, let's have Carolyn read that one too, because she has a much prettier voice than me.
Had I the heavens embroidered cloths, enwrought with golden and silver light, the blue and the dim and the dark cloths of night and light and the half-light, I would spread the cloths under your feet, but I, being poor, have only my dreams. I have spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams.
Preston's new partner is Andrew Brandt, played by Ty Diggs, who looks up to him. Yet since he killed his partner, Preston has stopped taking the drugs and spares a sense offender, Mary O'Brien, played by Emily Watson. He soon meets the leader of the underground, Jurgen, who is William Fichtner, who's in both of these movies, who convinces him that he must kill Father. At the same time, he's also been charged with finding a conspiracy within the clerics by Vice Consul DuPont, played by Angus McFadden. When O'Brien is finally terminated, our hero has an emotional breakdown and is arrested by his partner. He soon learns that DuPont has become the new father, has started a new group within the council of those who don't take the drugs either. As you can imagine, this leads our hero to kill everyone with a sword and guns, It's why he came to see this movie, and he kills about 118 people in this, and with some really flashy gun fu, gun kata moves. Equilibrium was produced by Jean de Bont's production company, Blue Tulip Productions. The budget was covered by tax incentives thanks to his Dutch citizenship, and the international sales paid for the movie's budget. So when critics didn't like it and it only had a limited release, it really didn't matter. When he was told about those reviews, director Kurt Wimmer said, "Why would I make a movie for someone I wouldn't want to hang out with? Have you ever met a critic you wanted to party with? I haven't. Kurt, let's party, dude. I love your movies." This movie has been forgotten, but I'd love if more people watched it. Sure, it takes a lot of inspiration from other things, but also has warrior monks with guns that form the logo of their country when they fire them. And it takes place in a side future that looks super gothic. It is pretty awesome. Our next movie is a film that Severin is putting out, and it's called The Mummy and the Curse of the Jackals. Yeah, there's no trailer for this movie. That's about as good as you're going to get. Oliver Drake may have started as an actor, but he's probably best known as a prolific screenwriter of 151 movies and a director of 41, including 2 adult films, Angelica the Young Vixen and Ride a Wild Stud, using the name Revilko Eckard, which is his name backwards. You're not fooling anybody, Count Alucard. A former cattle rancher, he brought his own trained horse with him to Hollywood in 1917. After acting in silent films, he directed, wrote, and produced movies for Gene Autry, Tex Ritter, and others for RKO, Monogram, and Republic. He was so invested in the Western film genre that he used his Pear Blossom California ranch for location shooting. But by 1969, he was pretty much done after working in TV for quite some time and moved to Las Vegas to seemingly retired, but there he decided to make a horror movie. Now, many reviewers claim he never worked in horror before, but he wrote the 1968 proto-slasher No Tears for the Damned, aka Las Vegas Strangler, as well as The Mummy's Curse, an actual Universal movie, Riders of the Whistling Skull, The Giallo-esque Sinister Hands, and Weird Woman. And Tom Weaver's interviews with B science fiction and horror movie makers. The movie star Anthony Isley, who is in some of the worst movies ever, but best, right? Like Dracula versus Frankenstein, said the director was quite senile at the time, the absolute epitome of total confusion. That claim is denied by the director's daughter, who said on IMDb, "Oliver Drake would have agreed with these reviews. I should know because he was my father. He was his own harshest critic, and he did not enjoy watching this after it resurfaced on VHS. It is also incorrect that it was the only monster movie ever made. The Mummy's Curse comes to mind. But I completely disagree with comments made by Anthony Isley that my father was senile during the making of this film. It's true that the movie was never finished, and it sat in the vault for years. My father wanted to write 2 books, both of which were well received by critics. He attended many Western film festivals and was the guest of honor and gave very informative and entertaining speeches about the early days of filmmaking. The Mummy and the Curse of the Jackals was written and co-produced by William C. Edwards. He only has 3 other movies on his IMDb page, with one being the aforementioned Ride a Wild Stud, a movie sold as being said where men were men and women didn't forget it, and Dracula the Dirty Old Man, another movie that also has the Jackal Man in it, as Dracula uses the Alucard name, see, it never gets old, and slaves Dr. Irving Jekyll, get it, Jekyll, making him a were-jackal, forcing him to bring women to his cabin. It's the kind of movie that you can see the stick holding up a vampire bat. I love it. Man, Edwards loved the Alucard trick. Not Alucard, that would just be screaming. Alucard trick. After all, he's a mummy named Sirach instead of Karis. And the Annika character, yes, he adored Universal horror movies, is Akana. Well, guess what? This movie is kind of sort of a sequel to the Universal movies, as it brings back, and also to his Dracula films, it brings back the were-jackal, now using the name Irving Jackalman. And anyways, how did this get made? Drake ended up in Vegas, and Edwards was working with Vega International Pictures. According to an article in the Las Vegas Sun, This is the first of many films they had in the works, saying The Mummy and the Curse of the Jackal was designed as a breakaway from the high camp and pseudo-intellectual spook picture. Said one executive, "There's no social comment and no hidden meaning. The horror characters are designed to scare the hell out of the audience. That's that." Supposedly, the movie ran out of financing before it was completed, and all the footage was confiscated by an unpaid contractor, which is how it ended up on VHS. When Academy released a decimated-looking copy in 1985, complete with sitar music, I guess that's as close to Egyptian as they could get, and surf rock instrumentals, which we heard a little bit at the beginning, instead of whatever movie music was supposed to be in this. Maybe Drake himself was looking to sell it at one point. There are vague stories of it playing in 1969 in a Los Angeles theater, and once on a horror show on UHF. Somehow Drake sold the movie they ran for their lives to the CBS late movie, so really isn't anything possible. So let's talk about the movie. The sarcophagus of Princess Akana is arrived in Las Vegas and is being displayed by controversial archaeologist Dave Barry, who's Anthony Isley, along with another mummy. Now, the princess is remarkably well preserved, and he falls in love with her, sleeping next to her dead body, creepy, falling for the curse of the jackal, which is kind of like King Diamond's curse of the pharaohs, or, well, merciful fate, which transforms him into a jackal by the light of the moon. And by jackal, I mean he looks a lot like my Chihuahua cubby. The princess is played by Marliza Pons, who is a famous belly dancer, perhaps America's most famous belly dancer, and supposedly an uncredited part in Cleopatra, and also did babyshoot her sugar daddy, along with one of my favorite actresses, Renee Bond. Let me tell you, the place where the mummies are stored is in no way hermetically sealed or scientifically minded. It's a shack somewhere in Hendersonville, Nevada, which is very close to Las Vegas. It looks like a total mess. The princess wakes up, Dave falls in love with her, takes her on dates, and teaches her how to put on a bra, which is a modern invention that she doesn't quite understand. Let me tell you, I've seen a lot of movies, but nothing has prepared me for a movie where a were-jackal by night explains to an undead Egyptian princess how maiden form works.
What is this?
That goes there.
Here, but how?
Like that?
Well, it seems so uncomfortable.
Princess, let's approach this scientifically. First, you put your left arm through the strap on the left side. Now, your right arm through the strap on the right side. Now, just hook the two ends together behind you.
But how?
Here, Princess, let me do it. Now, do you think you can manage the rest yourself?
Yes, that shall not be difficult.
Good.
They also go to a Vegas show, at which point the other mummy awakens and attacks an exotic dancer before blasting his way through a wall. I was wondering, how could this get any better? And then John Carradine shows up for a minute to say scientific stuff.
Lieutenant Barnes here said he had some trouble with a mummy last night. He asked me to sort of look into it for him.
A mummy, sir?
Yes, can you imagine? Also, some sort of a wolf man.
But now, it isn't funny to us, Professor.
Oh, I don't mean to make light of your problem, Lieutenant. I think you'll find there's no real mummy involved.
Yes, of course.
So you see, Lieutenant, as I told you, what David's doing has no bearing on what has happened. David, you come over here with me a minute. You excuse us, Lieutenant? Sir.
I am the biggest fan of John Carradine showing up for 2 or 3 minutes in a movie to get his name on the poster, get it sold, and just say a couple lines of dialogue and walk right back off.
Now, this is definitely a mummy case used by the Egyptians of the 9th dynasty. Observe the mold. Of course, I can't be sure without some additional tests, but I would venture to guess that that's an accumulation of about 4,000 years.
Do you mean to tell me that we have a live mummy here in Las Vegas? Come on, Professor. Do you really expect me to believe that?
Lieutenant, I'm a scientist. I can only go by facts. Now, the lab test shows that piece of material you gave me last night that you said came from the body of one of the 2 murdered girls also originated in Egypt 4,000 years ago. Look. These the photographs of the two mummy cases that were en route to the university in the plane that was lost near here a few weeks ago. They've had the hieroglyphics enlarged and translated for me. I believe that what we feared is true. We not only have a live mummy on our hands, but something else which nobody in modern times has had to contend with. A jackal man.
What do we do about it?
We can't just stand by and let a 4,000-year-old mummy and a jackal man take over the city. Of course, this may not happen at all. You see, according to the ancient beliefs concerning the goddess Isis, her powers are at their peak as far as control of mortals is concerned, only at the season and cycle of the full moon.
What does that have to do with it?
Last night when those two girls were killed was the third night of the full moon. Tonight is the fourth and final phase of the cycle. Now I believe that after tonight, the powers of the goddess will be terminated until the next full moon, a month from now.
Then what you're telling me is that after someone is killed tonight, we can relax and forget about the whole thing until next month. Now, I just can't buy that, Professor.
It seems evident that David's mixed up in this. The fact is, I think he's under some kind of, I hate to use the word, some kind of spell. And I believe that after tonight, the powers of that spell will be so limited that I'll be able to talk with him and find the key to this whole mystery before next month.
If David Baring is mixed up in this, why don't I just lock him up?
Oh, that'd be the worst thing you can do. I would just force the parties involved to go underground. No, leave David alone. I would suggest that you put every man on duty tonight that you can, just to be on the safe side. But don't let David know you suspect anything. He's not quite himself just now.
All right, Professor. I'll do it your way. But I certainly hope that's the right way to do it.
So do I, Lieutenant. So do I.
Is this heaven? Yes, if heaven has a were-jackal and a mummy battling on Fremont Street, back when Vegas was seedier and cooler and filled with tourists, you just keep looking and keep on gambling. Because, yeah, you see monsters fighting every day. But you only get to do the chance to do Vegas at once every few years. Can it get any better? Of course. The Mummy is played by Saul Goldsmith, which is the least frightening name for a person to ever play a mummy. This is 80 minutes of film with 2 sentences of plot, which is just how I like it. You come here wanting mummies, and you get monsters and mummies and were-jackals. You get all of it. It completely rips off Universal's The Mummy, adds in a Herschel Gordon Lewis style tongue ripping out effect. There's a scene where Dave takes a Kana, who has a magic ring who can hypnotize people, on a double date where he says that she's not from here, she comes from back east. The cinematographer was William G. Troiano, who also worked on the Vegas productions Ride a Wild Stud, which we've talked a lot about. They Ran for Their Lives and No Tears for the Damned. He'd follow this by going to work on Horror of the Blood Monsters. He also shot She Freak, The Devil's Messenger, and The Wild World of Batwoman. That's what I call a career. The makeup effects, such as they are by Bird Holland, whose credits stretch across the gamut of my cinematic obsessions. Work on everything from Rabid to The Baby to Lamora to The Undertaker and His Pals and Terror Circus. Supposedly, he spent days doing a transformation scene that was cut from the movie. It was assisted by Jack Shaffron, the creature developer for The Intruder Within and effects on Jennifer, and Timothy Tierney, who did effects for Dracula vs. Frankenstein and the Astro Zombies. Other effects come from Harry Woolman, who worked on a ton of movies I love, like Evil Speak, Hangar 18, In Search of Historic Jesus, The Incredible Melting Man, Rattlers, Supervan, Love Camp 7, Dolomite, Don't Go Near the Park. Again, what a career. This movie really is a nexus point for my fascinations. It has no fewer than 4 assistant directors, such as Wyatt Ordung, who shot second unit for The Navy vs. the Night Monsters, and wrote Robot Monster. William Kirkman, second unit for The Dark, and Plan 9 from Outer Space. Yeah, that movie had a second unit. Russell Hayden only worked in this film, but Robert Farfan was an assistant director on Rebel Without a Cause, which is classy. And more movies I'd be proud to say I worked on, like Bride of the Monster and the strange and beloved Moonfire, a trucker movie about space. This is a movie filled with were-jackal murderers of winos and cops. I've oversold it to you a bit beyond belief, but when you watch it, you may wonder why I love it so. I really love the idea of it, the fact that it exists, and this to me is why movies are made in the first place. It has those lines we heard from John Carradine: "We can't stand by and let a 4,000-year-old mummy and a jackal man take over this city." It was made by people who have great careers before and after, and yet here we are, in a world where we can say, I know that I could be watching a movie that critics adore and agree is true cinema that makes the blind see and the lame walk, but I'm going to watch The Mummy and The Curse of the Jackals and disappoint everyone. Severn is releasing this in July. They found a print at Ewing Lucky Brown's Los Angeles estate and added 2 hours of special features, including Angelica the Last Vixen, another movie made by the filmmakers that is straight up porn. So pretty exciting. A lot of info from this post came from the Amazing Monster Kid Classic Forum, which has a ton of info about all sorts of movies like this. Up next is a film that one of my friends did for the site, AC Nicholas, who used to be a drive-in projectionist and disc jockey. He did a movie called Wavelength.
Weeks ago in the Mojave Desert, they were first encountered. They were taken to a top-secret government installation beneath a major American city. They were kept in a state of suspended animation. And then, the experiments began.
Is there more than one voice?
Voices. They were more like thoughts.
Wavelength. No one was supposed to hear them.
It's coming from somewhere in there. Oh, God.
What?
Oh, God!
What is it, Iris?
No one was supposed to discover them. But now that someone has,
They want to know what you've done with your friend.
God, the world must never know.
We gotta make sure those things stay down there.
Seal the lab. Everybody out now. Hey, what the hell's going on?
Don't you understand what's happening here?
Arm your weapon. By God, General, this is madness.
I'm picking up something strange. You must be 2 miles.
These days, we live great lives of convenience. Just about any movie we want to watch is just a few clicks away on the remote control or keyboard. Yet even with this luxury, I yearn for days of old when I used to scour the catalogs of mail order businesses like Video Search in Miami and Sinister Cinema, or the dealer tables at cons in search of elusive films. These treasure hunts were thrilling when you unearthed a gem that had never been released on home media in the U.S., like Deathline, aka Raw Meat. My blurry VHS dupe bore the title Tren de la Mort and had Spanish subtitles. Or Jess Franco's The Bloody Judge, aka Night of the Bloody Beast. My copy was entitled The Throne of Fire and was in French with no English subtitles. But I realized the fun times were over when Evan Franco's Vampirus Lesbos, a film never released theatrically in the United States, got a special edition DVD. For years, I'd stared at the same 3 stills from that film in books and horror films. But now it was mine to own. Today, everything, no matter how obscure, gets an official home media release, while almost everything Wavelength, a science fiction film from 1983, still has never been released at DVD or streaming in this country. Robert Carradine is a down-on-his-luck musician. One day when things are looking bleak, he meets an attractive young woman in a bar, and she's played by the estimable Cherry Curry of the groundbreaking rock band The Runaways. They quickly hit it off, hook up, and become a couple. He soon learns that his new girlfriend is psychic. She starts hearing strange voices, leading them to an underground bunker in the desert where evil government is experimenting on 3 captured aliens. With the help of a drunken old coot played by Keenan Wynn, of course, they work to free the childlike aliens so they can return to their mothership and go home. In other words, it's the same plot as E.T. the Extraterrestrial, with bigger ambitions, but on a fraction of the budget. The beautiful special effects shot in the finale delayed the film's release until after E.T. had become a box office behemoth. Perhaps in an alternate universe, Wavelength came first, one can only imagine. Sincerely written and directed by Mike Gray, a former documentary filmmaker who wrote The China Syndrome, and Chuck Norris's Code of Silence, charmingly acted by Carradine and Curry, with a typical great score by Tangerine Dream. Wavelength was once a staple of HBO. Now it's fallen into the black hole of forgotten films where you can go look at a soft VHS rip on YouTube. It's not a world beater, but it's a well-done B-movie, which was released theatrically by New World Pictures. Little fanfare and even less box office success. I saw it in an empty theater in its original run. Here's the Wavelength's rediscovery. Like an artifact from a Grail quest. In the good old days, it's a tiny gem. Thanks, AC.
Hey, careful. That one is a hunting arrow, okay? This thing's a razor sharp.
An innocent weekend in the sun.
Look, I found that in the windshield.
Chip, you better not be trying to scare me.
Becomes a nightmare of unspeakable terror.
You are all going to die?
Stalked by the symbol of unrelenting evil, they'll do anything to survive.
Come on, joke's a joke, but this is kind of crazy, don't you think?
To be your friend. That's why I saved you till the end.
Too terrifying to be real. Too deadly to be anything else. Mirage.
The next movie on our list is Mirage from 1990. Yeah, it's a movie not a lot of people know. I discovered it from the Unsung Horrors podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts. I'm a big fan of killer car movies. This fits into June 24th, which was Cars. We can subgenre this into Fillones, like Italian film lovers do. There's possessed automobiles, The Car, Christine, Ferret, Vampire, Maximum Overdrive, Super Hybrid, Killers in Vehicles, Duel, Joyride, Death Car on the Freeway, Death Proof, Wheels of Terror. Movies that have killers that get in and out of cars, like The Hitcher, Hitcher in the Dark. There were ones where the hero drives a car to get revenge, like Rolling Vengeance, The Wraith, The Gladiator. Mirage is somewhere in the middle of all these as a black pickup truck, seemingly driven by a young man who could also be a demon. All he wants to do is kill everyone that comes to his desert and makes out there. My wife lived in Vegas for a few years, and when I went out to meet her family, we went and shot guns in said desert, had a picnic. She said no matter how many times she went to parties out there or events in the middle of it, she never saw anyone just whip off their tops and get drunk in the middle of a place where you can get dehydrated near immediately. Chris, Jennifer McAllister, and Greg Kenneth Johnson introduced to us as they make sweet love in the back of their truck with a toolbox on the accelerator as it drives them out into the infinite spaces of the desert as if nothing could stop it or hurt them. Along with another couple who are as into arguing as they are having sex, Trip and Mary, played by Kevin McParland and Nicole Anton, and her ex, Kyle, also shows up, the ex of Chris, and he has his new girlfriend, Bambi, Laura Albert. The desert seems as good place as any to have soft swinging and everybody just make out near each other. I'd recommend a furniture store like Chopping Mall. Also, Kyle is Greg's brother, which suggests to me that Chris is a horrible person because you should never date somebody's brother after you break up with them. It just feels weird. After a day in the sun of being stalked by a black truck and having Greg and Kyle get in a punch-up, the kids find a note written in blood that says you're all going to die. This note is more than prophetic as the driver of the black truck has grenades. What slasher villain has grenades that he uses to blow these kids up real good? Thanks to Unsung Horrors, I learned that the bad guy, known only as the villain in the credits, is B.G. Steers, who might be Burr Steers, who is one of the radio voices in Reservoir Dogs and the Flock of Seagulls character in Pulp Fiction. His character, other than the out there Trip, who lies bleeding from the mouth, and it speaks of the astral plane. Steers, if he is Burr Steers, also directed 17 again, Igby Goes Down, and Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. This movie itself was directed by William Crane, not the one that made Blackula. He also made Midnight Fear and co-wrote this movie with Chuck Hughes and Michael Crane. It's interesting that there are so few desert and daytime slashers, even if you can see Chekhov's bow and arrow appear from the very opening of this movie. The best part is when one of the jocks utters a gay slur and promptly gets run over by a truck. Well, actually, the best part are the effects by R. Christopher Biggs, who went on to work on Demolition Man and the TV series Martin. One imagines he transformed Martin into Shanae in every episode. Strangely, this movie has a soundtrack that was done by SST Records with bands like Sister Double Happiness, Minutemen, Firehose, and Dinosaur Jr. What, no St. Vitus or Negative Land? Oh, wow. This movie is something else. It's kind of hard to find. It's never been released on any formats that I can find. It's on YouTube. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily great, but it's definitely weird. And that also goes for the next movie, Heaven's Revenge, which is a Tubi movie. I'm consumed by the idea that the African American movies on Tubi flow from the same Filoni as the American giallo or sex thrillers, without the filmmakers making them ever having seen a traditional giallo. Heaven's Revenge feels like the direct-to-video softcore murder movies of the 90s, but infused with the viewpoint of a filmmaker who might have read about them but didn't experience them. This was originally a 22-minute short before being expanded into a full-length movie, directed, written, produced by Lanice Adams, who was the first African-American woman to be a contestant on The Bachelor. She's also Heaven, who falls in love with, the reason I watched this movie, a pro wrestler, Jackson Davis, who is not a pro wrestler. He's Marcus Nell Jamal Ham. She told the website Heart and Soul my new feature film, Heaven's Revenge, was inspired by classic films, such as Misery, Fatal Attraction, Unfaithful, and A Thin Line Between Love and Hate. We wanted to make a film that was a thriller, but with strong passion, strong dialogue, and a film that leaves the audience with an opinion on what they've just seen. It's a giallo. A lot of the feedback has been different from men than women. Men tend to believe that Heaven Bailey, our leading character, was crazy, but women overwhelmingly see the issues with how Jackson Davis treated Heaven in the relationship, which made her act crazy. Both actors wrote the script with Miranda Bowden, and it feels like a lot of this movie's ad-libbed. It's really strange because there's times when they're arguing and times when they're getting along, and then they start shouting at each other again. Yes, Heaven did break into Jackson's house and shoot him, then convince his family, if not the police, that she saved him and is nursing him back to health, when she's really throwing him in the shower, slapping around while he makes crying noises that sound like that burned up guy that Jordan Peele played, that one where Keegan-Michael Key is the comedian. He's like, make fun of me. She also lures his new girlfriend Sarah to his house and gets her drunk and flips out and murders her. She also keeps trying to have sex with our near comatose hero. I guess hero, protagonist, who knows. The democracy of Tubi movies is what I love the most. They're so pure. It seems like nearly anyone can tell their story, and it gets up on Tubi and can find it. I would never find this movie otherwise. Where would it reach me? Not on any mainstream streamer. Tubi's the closest thing to the traditional mom and pop video store that we have today. And sometimes you get to watch a movie like Heaven's Revenge. The next movie, Revenge was the subject, is The Punisher, Dirty Laundry. And man, the Punisher used to be the kind of comic book character whose t-shirts you could wear in public, but today, just like conspiracy theories, it's all been ruined. Everything's ruined, as Mike Patton once sang. He's also never really had a fair shake in a movie as the Dolph Lundgren Punisher, the Thomas Jane Punisher, and Punisher Warzone are all fine, but they're missing a bit of what makes a character work when the right creative team's on it. Yes, I realize he was on the show Daredevil and had 2 series of his own show. I think John Bernthal's the right look for Frank Castle. This short, he said, is where he was inspired to make the movie. This is the best interpretation I've ever seen of The Punisher. It's directed by Phil Journal, who did 3 O'Clock High, a great movie, and Rattle and Hum, and a lot of YouTube videos. We won't hold that against him. And written by producer Adi Shankar, Chad St. John, and star Thomas Jane, who had already played the Punisher once before. When he showed this movie at San Diego Comic-Con, Jane said, I wanted to make a fan film for a character I've always loved and believed in. A love letter to Frank Castle and his fans. It was an incredible experience with everyone on the project, throwing in their time just for the fun of it. It's been a blast to be part of from start to finish. We hope that the friends of Frank enjoy watching it as much as we did making it. Story is simple. All the Punisher wants to do is wash his clothes, but the neighborhood he's in won't allow it. There's a pimp named Goldtooth who's abusing his girls and attacking a young boy named Deshaun. As he watches his clothing spin, he tries to get away by grabbing a yoo-hoo. The owner of the store, a disabled vet named Big Mike, played by Ron Perlman, reveals he tried to stop them once. Now he ended up crippled. Frank buys a bottle of whiskey from him and proceeds to do what he does best, kill every single person around him. It's exactly who the character is, someone you wouldn't really want to be around, and a man who is only kept alive by a war he fights alone. The best versions of the Punisher don't make him a hero. He's a serial killer, except he kills criminals, but he's still a very haunted and destroyed man. This movie's around 10 minutes. It's on YouTube. It's definitely worth a watch, especially, okay, look, I know that people are kind of sick of comic book movies, but look, this one definitely works. Up next is the second Lombardo Bava TV movie I did for films for Junesploitation, Ordo che non velve muore, which is The Man Who Didn't Want to Die. This is the only episode of Alta Tension I had not seen until now. The other episodes are Il Gioco, story of a teacher thinking her students murdered the instructor she has replaced, the Jawa Testimonio Cale, and another one I did for Junesploitation, Il Maestro del Terror, which is a horror director attacked by a writer and actor. All these are by Lombardo Bava. The Man Who Wouldn't Die was originally going to air in 1989, but due to concerns about how violent these films were, it didn't play on Italian TV until 2007. The other three aired in 1999, but none of them have been released on home media legally. It's written by Gianfranco Clary, who wrote Strange Shadows in an Empty Room, a great giallo, based on a short story by Giorgio Scarbenasico. It's about a gang of 5 burglars, an art dealer, Madame Giron, played by Martine Brochard from Murder Obsession, hired to steal art from Rich Man's Villa, led by Fabrizio, Keith Van Hooven from Demons 3. The thieves, including Lena Salme, who did coke out of a coke can in Demons, and Stefano Malari, the demon in the movie within the movie Demons 2, tie up the man in the house and his wife, take everything they can, also that they can sell the art to Mr. Mirage, Jacques Saranas. The problem is that one of the gang, Gianetto, screws over the gang and cuts up the most expensive thing they take, Renoir's painting After the Bath. He hides it in the villa's garage and decides to go back for it later. That would be bad enough, but Gianetto also attacks the husband and rapes his tied-up wife while the husband is forced to watch. He gets enraged. The husband escapes, kicks him in the head, and it seems like he kills him. Fabrizio kills both the husband and wife, wraps the body of Gianetto in the carpet. The gang argues what to do with him, but they decide to just strip his body, dump him in the woods. He survives and comes back to life in the hospital. He wants revenge, but he's lucky to stay alive as a giallo killer starts to murder all the gang. One's face gets smashed and others killed by toilet with an awesome point of view shots and a smooshed head for the last crook. This is originally a movie that was said to be made by Mario Bava, who had been working on the script with Rafael Azcona and Alessandro Parencio. It's not Lombardo's best work, but the kills look great, and the Simon Boswell score is really good. You can find this through various gray market sources online. Up next, the She-Beast for Barbara Steele Day.
The She-Beast. Deadlier than Dracula, wilder than the werewolf, more frightening than Frankenstein. Another victim of a strange revenge, wreaked on the innocent from beyond the grave. Hurling a town into a terrifying struggle against the powers of darkness. The witch Verdella, known to be dead for centuries, comes to blood-chilling life before disbelieving eyes, unleashing all manner of monstrous evil in the town in which she was supposed to have breathed her last. You'll see a creature of the damned, damning the living to destruction when you ceased. Starring Barbara Steele, Mel Wells, and co-starring John Carlson. You'll see a monster in human form defy her doom as the townspeople drag her from her cave to the witch's dunking chair. But even that deadly device cannot save...
Barbara Steele. Michael Reeves. He only directed 3 movies, The Sorcerers and Witchfinder General, the other 2. He also said something to do with Castle of the Living Dead, supposedly. He was an assistant for Don Siegel, worked for Jack Cardiff, and Henry Levin on the film Genghis Khan. Made it in 21 days for no money. Barbara Steele made $1,000 for a day of work. That day of work was 18 hours, so it was not easy. Most of the crew is acts in this movie. Reeves wrote the script along with F. Amos Powell and Mel Wills, who was in this movie, perhaps better known as Lady Frankenstein's director. This was under the name Michael Byron, is who the writer is listed as. 200 years ago in Transylvania, a witch named Vardella was burned at the stake, but not before threatening, as all witches do, to come back for revenge. This ends up ruining the honeymoon of Philip, Ian Ogilvy, and Veronica, the wonderful Barbara Steele. And that's not even counting the squalid hotel owned by Groper, who's played by Mel Wills. As they enjoy breakfast, Count von Helsing, John Carlson, delights in sharing the legend of Dracula and the story of Vardella. These foreigners, these ugly Americans, or wherever they're from, have no interest in this weird old man. They blow him off. Well, that night, Philip catches Groper peeping on his wife and beats him into oblivion, and he just wants to leave. And she's like, no, let's just stay over. Okay, they leave in the morning, wreck into a lake, and when they pull out his new bride, it's not her, it's the dead body of the witch. Now Philip has to make nice with Von Helsing after being rude to him, be part of the plan to take this dead body, drug it, and perform an exorcism to get his wife back. Seems like a lot of work, but I've done so much more work for women who couldn't stand the brightness of Barbara Steele's flawless alabaster skin. How do you kill a witch? You drown it. That's also how you find out that someone is a witch. This played double features in America, distributed by AIP with The Embalmer. Depending on who's asked about Reeves, he did minor second unit work on that Italian movie I brought up before, a polish on the script's dwarf character, a complete takeover, or nothing at all on Curse of the Living Dead. But you know what? I'd like to believe he just took over and made the movie himself. Sadly, he died after making Witchfinder General as he was getting ready for his next movie, an accidental overdose. A shame. The next movie, All Hail Tubi, From Hell to the Wild West. It's where I found it. It's my Western. And I love a horror Western. Bone Tomahawk, The Pale Door, Death Rider and the House of the Vampires. Let's get that Danzig in there. And Grim Prairie Tales. How about Jesse James Meets Frankenstein's Daughter, Curse of the Undead, Billy the Kid versus Dracula. Even some great Italian Westerns. One of my favorites is Django Kill If You Live Shoot and God Said to Cain, a movie that is way out in front of Clint Eastwood making similar movies. This movie feels like it was meant for me. I mean, let me ask you, do you want a Western with Jack the Ripper leaving England for the Wild West? Sure. And what if he dresses like a slasher killer and he talks to himself about purifying women? Love it. Wouldn't that be awesome? Yes, but wasn't that already a knife for the ladies? How can we make it better? What if Jack the Ripper battled a man named Mr. Buczynski? Is that Charles Bronson's real name? Who looks just like Charles Bronson because he's played by Robert Bronzy, the 60-something Hungarian actor who was born Robert Kovacs, the man who performed in a European Wild West stage show when director Rene Perez saw his photo on the wall of a bar and thought it was an undiscovered Bronson movie. Since then, he's been in the films Death Kiss, Cry Havoc, Once Upon a Time in Deadwood, Exorcist Vengeance, which says, what if Charles Bronson was in The Exorcist? It's great. And Escape from Death Block 13 and this Western. As you can tell, I love Charles Bronson. I love the idea of Robert Bronzy. I wish he was in more movies. I would love to cast him in something. A lot of the female leads in this movie are also victims in another Rene Perez movie, Playing with Dolls, Havoc. Perez made the movies They Make Us Wake. They Want Us Woke, Not Awake, and Pro God, Pro Gun. I feel like I'm going to have to watch those movies in spite of myself. The Havoc serial killer that was in Cry Havoc is also in fought Bronson. So that movie answers what if the real Jason Voorhees fought Charles Bronson, or what if Michael Myers fought Charles Bronson? The killer may be Francis Tumblety, who some people really think was the real Jack the Ripper. He did not look like he had a leather mask and long hair. But who are we to try to bring logic into a movie where fake Bronson battles a monster in a tourist Western town? I really think the Ripper looks like David Cronenberg's character from Nightbreed more than anything. You won't care about anyone in this movie other than Bronson or Bronzy, such as his power. But seriously, nobody matters. They should have just been an hour of the serial killer fighting him and them shooting at each other. That's what I want out of this movie. But you know what? What I get is good enough.
You look like hell, Jack. What's the matter? You just get late? Get your ass down to the station. I've got a sweet one here for you.
How many kids is that now?
We've had an average of 4 missing teenager reports a week.
Your blood test and all other security matters seem to be in order. Enjoy your stay in New Los Angeles.
In the not-too-distant future,
Run, Centurion!
an evil force
Hold it!
wants to change the world.
The moment of truth has arrived. You must decide who will live and who will die.
Kill him! That's what we came to see!
And only one man can stop them. Mortal Challenge. Where death is a spectacle for the rich.
Hang on! Hang on! Has he got the reach?
David McCallum, Timothy Bottoms, Mortal Challenge.
Jackal, come on!
the 29th was New Horizons, and that means Death Game. No, not the Death Game that Grindhouse Releasing put out. This one's directed by Randy Cheveldave, who he mainly worked as a producer, and it's written by Blaine Brown, who wrote and directed Web of Seduction, I'm Watching You, those two movies. Death Game's also known as Mortal Challenge. If you're like, hey, that sounds like Mortal Kombat, congratulations. That's why they called it that. This starts with Los Angeles in the year 2023, last year. The city of Angels has been split in two by an earthquake. The rich and powerful, of course, live on a new island, a much better Los Angeles, while the poor survive in the old L.A. Detective Jack Timothy Bottoms has been hired to find Tori, played by Jodie Thompson, the daughter of one of the elite, Mr. Barrington. She and the gardener, whose name is Kaz, Lauro David Chartlin Deval, wow, that's a lot, they've fallen in love. She keeps sneaking out of the rich section of town to the ruined city to see them after the father forces them to split. She's been kidnapped by the Centurions, rulers of an underground arena. Just as Jack finds where she's going, he runs into Hawk, played by Nicholas Hill, a gang. They fight. The Centurions end up stealing away Hawk and most of his gang, leaving our detective protagonist to team up with the gang's tech geek Freeze, Alfonso Cuajada. They start looking for where this mysterious battleground is. It's run by Malice, David McCollum from Man from U.N.C.L.E., who is so obsessed with Rome that he's turned this part of the city of flowers and sunshine into a coliseum, complete with a gladiator named Rogius, played by Richard Farrisee, and a cyborg named Grep, who's Evan Lurie, who is Hologram Man. Is he getting typecast as a robot bad guy? In addition to being Ilyana Kraken on Man from U.N.C.L.E., Simon Carter and Cold Steel on Sapphire and Steel, and Dr. Donald Ducky Millard on NCIS. David McCollum had a great run in life. He was married to fashion model and Catherine Carpenter for 58 years, also married to Jill Ireland, lost her to Charles Bronson. Tough luck. In the audience of rich kids watching these fights is Alex, the man Tori left because she was afraid of how much he loved watching bloodshed. Oh yeah, and so is a very young Michael Bublé, watching and voting thumbs up or thumbs down. All of these post-apocalyptic gladiator movies need a femme fatale. So this has Felicia, who's played by Corinne St. Ange, one of the vampires from Bordello of Blood. She's nearly orgasmic over this to the death man-on-man action. When you see this movie, you'll hear the theme song. You probably heard it in the trailer there. And you think someone's mom rented this instead of Mortal Kombat because they got confused. That's how Roger Corman made his money.
Excuse me, sir, can I interest you in one of these?
What are they?
It's about the Society of Brethren.
Brethren, what do they do?
Jesus saves you.
What are you, some sort of bloody crank?
No sacrifice is great enough. Blessed be the brethren, and you alone suffer. Hallelujah.
Beware, my brethren.
Saying unto you, my brethren, all over the world, pray that you may
Sinner, meet your maker.
You are able to carry on.
She will be reborn, Mother.
You must never let them tempt you. They'll try and make you have sex.
Love your Christ or die.
Kenny, too, has dedicated his life to God.
I baptized her, Mother.
Sinner, meet your maker.
He was nailed to the cross, to the cross.
Beware, my brethren.
Beware, my brethren.
For without Christ you are destroyed. Without Christ I'll be devoured by hell fire.
Something ought to be done about those crank religions.
In the name of the brethren, he washed away the sins of women.
The day of retribution is at hand.
And led them to the gates of hell.
There is no escape. I am his sword, his avenging angel. The good Lord speaks and says, put your house in order. Yes, the Lord says, put your house in order for my day of vengeance.
Beware, my brethren.
Final movie. Junesploitation is a slasher. It's a nascent slasher. It's 1972's Beware My Brethren, also known as The Fiend, directed by Robert Hartford Davis, who did The Black Torment, Gonks Go Beat, a crazy toy-inspired movie, Black Gun, and Corruption, which is
No woman will dare go home alone after seeing corruption. Therefore, no woman will be admitted alone to this super shocker.
It's written by Brian Comfort, who did Girly and The Asphyx. This starts with the baptism being juxtaposed with a pretty young girl being strangled and thrown in a river. British pre-slashers, you are never subtle. Bertie Wems, who's played by Ann Todd, has given most of her life's money and her home to the Brethren, a fire and brimstone church that believes the world's going to hell. All the religion in the home and the sermons of Patrick McGee, the minister, made her withdrawn son Kenny into a lunatic, cleaning the streets of fallen women. Kenny works at a public swimming pool by day and a security guard by night. Mostly what he does is yells at girls who dressed in skimpy bathing suits. Meanwhile, his mother's health is failing, and the priest won't let her take any medicine. Yet she gets insulin for her diabetes and a state-provided nurse, Brigitte, who tells her investigative reporter sister Patty about the ministry. As she's been writing about cults, Patty tries to sneak in, pretending she's an expectant mother. Kenny is killing women everywhere, from a nubile teen who goes topless at the pool to ladies of the evening, leaving them for people to find stripped of their clothing and dangling from meat hooks or hanging out of cement trucks. Now, meanwhile, his mother grows closer to Patty, and the minister accuses them of being lesbians. Refusing Mom her medication as the mother begins to die, Patty tries to save her, but Kenny locks her in the basement. But he finds out too late that the minister was wrong. As his mother dies, he confesses to the religious man that he's the nude killer that's been in all the papers. He then crucifies the minister in his own church. This has some incredible music, great theme. I have a weakness for early 70s horrors from England. Richard Kerr and Tony Osborne have a great soundtrack here, and that's Maxine Berry singing Wash Me in His Blood as the movie starts. People come alive with the spirit and start shaking. I would never survive the 70s because I'd totally be in one of these movie cults. So yeah, Beware My Brethren from 1972 is the last movie. You've gotten over an hour of Junesploitation films to listen to here. You can always go back and read about them on the site, bnsaboutmovies.com. You can reach out to me, send me mean letters. I get them all the time at bnsaboutmovies@gmail.com. Also, when you're on the site, you can do a Ko-fi link. You can sponsor the show. You can sponsor an episode. All the typical stuff they tell you on podcasts. Rate, review, smash the like button, whatever you want to do. I appreciate you listening, and I hope you had a fun Junesploitation. There'll be a new episode on Friday.